Greetings and welcome to the Black Flame Podcast, where history and legends collide, where cryptids, the supernatural, and the paranormal run free.
We are your hosts, Dan and John Leonard, and we are here to bring you stories of haunted places, creepy cryptids, and harrowing legends. So sit back and let us guide you through the world of the unexplained.
Today we'll be covering the Patterson-Gimlin film and the Beast of Barmston Drain.
So stick around to learn about these two cryptid tales.
Bigfoot, Sasquatch, Yeti, Yowie. All over the world and across countless cultures, people claim to have witnessed what appear to be large, bipedal, hairy hominoid beings, unknown to modern science. Thousands of encounters have been reported, but none have caused as much controversy as the one allegedly caught on film by Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin that would later be called the Patterson-Gimlin film. Most believe that it's an outright hoax, but what if I told you that it might be real? The film was shot on October 20th, 1967, about 25 miles northwest of Orleans, California, in an area called Bluff Creek. As the account goes, Patterson caught wind of some footprints in the Blue Creek area of Six Rivers National Forest. Patterson was working on a Sasquatch documentary at the time, and decided to seize the opportunity in the hopes of filming some of the alleged footprints. To have another experienced man with him, he convinced his acquaintance Bob Gimlin to tag along. After packing camping provisions and loading up the horse trailer, the pair were off to Six Rivers in Gimlin's truck. Much to their dismay, when they reached the area, the footprints had been mostly eroded by rainfall the previous evening, but they decided to press on anyway. They set up camp near Bluff Creek and started poking around the area on horseback. At around 1:30 p.m., they rounded a bend and spied a log jam in the middle of the creek, and just beyond it stood a 6.5 to 7 foot tall, bipedal, hairy creature. Both men looked on in shock as their horses began jumping and acting wild at the sight. Patterson tried to rein in his horse with one hand while reaching into his saddlebag with the other. He was able to grab the 35mm camera and slide off his horse before it took off into the woods. Patterson yelled for Gimlin to cover him as he ran towards the sandbar with the camera up to his eye. He ran towards the creature, filming all the way while Gimlin held his rifle on it. The resulting footage was less than a minute long and shows the alleged Sasquatch, affectionately known as Patty, walking in a left-to-right diagonal line away from the camera, casually glancing back for that world-famous shot before turning her back and walking up a steep hillside never to be seen again. Directly afterwards, the site was examined for tracks, and sure enough, they were there. Deep impressions in the ground that upon further inspection completely matched the shape and size of Patty's feet and the footage, along with several larger tracks they believed to belong to another individual. When looking at the tracks and how deep they were, Roger jumped off a stump and landed right next to one set of them, and he still couldn't get down as deep as those tracks were. It's been speculated that for a footprint of that size to reach the right depth in that sandy material, the creature that made them would have had to have weighed around 500 pounds. Another interesting aspect of the tracks is the evidence of a mid-tarsal break, which is a point of flexion in the middle of the foot where a human stiff arch would normally be. That finally brings us to the end of the encounter, so if you haven't seen it yet, now would be a great time to hit pause and go check out the 4K stabilized version of this footage, because I'm about to go pretty deep on video analysis, corroborating evidence, and hoax theories. With the entire film lasting less than a minute, you might think there wouldn't be enough evidence there to even examine, but the amount of minute detail caught in the film is deceivingly hard to explain with the popular hoax theories. I'm going to go over a few of the main arguments and rebuttals of the possibility of this being a man in a suit, so you can get an idea of where this crazy train is going.
Just a quick question before you keep on going.
Yeah.
You talked about the footprints, how they were said to be made by something roughly around 500 pounds.
Yeah.
Who measured the footprints. Who came up with that number 500 pounds? Was it those two guys, or did they have someone come out and look at the footprints? Or
No. So this is actually, I think, years after the fact, just examining the footprints, because it was a whole long trackway. There's a lot of footprints, and the most famous one that you see is a nice flat one, which was made on a harder surface, but because it was nice and flat, you had a nice impression. And so that's the main cast you see. There's a famous picture of Roger Patterson holding that up next to his foot.
Yeah.
And you see how big they are. And I think that's actually from the larger specimen and not from Patty. But what I'm talking about with the 500 pounds, those ones were Patty's footprints. And so they know the kind of material. It was a sandy, it's a sandy bank.
Yeah.
And you have Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin, who are both fairly large people, especially Bob. And neither of them could get, that far down, even jumping next to the tracks off of a, stump. And based on Patty walking along that, she wasn't stomping. She was just loping along, pretty casually, a little brisk, but she was moving, not tromping around in any way.
That's the other weird thing, because I've seen the foot, I've seen that footage for years.
Yeah.
Even when I was a kid, I've seen it. And I don't understand. Like, she's got kind of a hustle going.
Yeah.
But she's not running.
Yeah, she's not trucking by any means.
No, and that's what always surprised me, is why isn't she running? Why is she only just like speed walking out of there?
Well, and you can see, they actually say you only see her turn one time in the footage, but before Roger could actually get the camera out of his bag, they said that she turned towards them 2 other times. So she's keeping an eye on them the whole time and just kind of like, gotta get out of here, or want to get out of here. But you gotta think, this is a humongous animal, if it is an animal. It's probably not scared of anything. It doesn't have any natural predators. It hardly ever runs into people.
Yeah, but that might be the thing there. It hardly ever runs into people. Is that because it's scared of people? It could be.
There's a lot of different theories. Some people say they're just an endangered species. And so there's just not that many out there. And others say that they're just very good at evading people, and it could be a combination of the two. But I would imagine they probably try to stay away from it. I mean, obviously, if they are real, they do a damn good job of staying away from people.
Right.
And cameras. But, yeah. So moving on. The most widely accepted argument for the hoax theory is that a man named Bob Hieronymus wore a monkey suit on camera. At first glance, that looks like it checks out. It looks like a man in a monkey suit. But upon further inspection of both the film and the claims that Bob and others have made, it becomes clear that there are huge inconsistencies in his claims, and even the possibility that a suit like that could have been made at the time. So Bob Hieronymus was a neighbor of Roger Patterson's, who claimed that he helped Roger out with the hoax. According to his account, Roger made the suit out of horsehide and used football shoulder pads to beef up his shoulders, gloves with false fingers to make them look longer, make his hands look really big, and some sort of fake feet that he likened to large slippers. He also mentioned the fact that the suit was in 2 main pieces, aside from the gloves and slippers, those being a torso and pants. So he basically slipped on the top like a shirt and pulled on the bottom like pants. So that's an important thing that we're going to come back to. Upon first glance, this looks completely possible, and therefore most people dismiss the video entirely on that basis. However, when taking a close look at the detail of the alleged man in a suit, you can see multiple aspects that conflict with this account. Number 1. If you look very carefully at the fingers of the hand as the arms swing up, they very clearly curl, almost into a fist, before being uncurled on the way back down, which completely flies in the face of the fake finger aspect of it. I don't see how any kind of stiff finger, or even if they were extended, the way that they bend in the film, it looks as if someone's hand is just bending. Number 2, the footprints found at the scene show clear, deep impressions that blatantly exhibit the mid-tarsal break, which is impossible for a human foot to replicate because of our stiff arches. And the big one, number 3, the joint and limb proportions for Bob Hieronymus compared to Patty are completely off. It's really easy to dress up a human and fake a lot of different aspects of their body, but what you can't fake are the distances between the joints, such as the shoulder and elbow and wrist, and the hip, knee, and ankle. Bob's arm proportions are much shorter than Patty's, while his lower leg proportions are much longer than Patty's. So, you know what I mean when I say, like,
Yeah.
you can't fake the distance between your elbow and your wrist.
Right.
It's, unless you have some really good, almost animatronics, you can't do it. And even then, you can tell, like, where the shoulder bends and the distance between your shoulder and your elbow and your hips and your knees. You can't fake that because the body has to bend if he's walking.
Right.
So that doesn't make any sense. Now, another huge monkey wrench, no pun intended, in the Bob Hieronymus theory is that Philip Morris, who is a famous costume maker, claims to have made the suit out of a material called dynel, which is a fur cloth. Not only does that completely rub against the grain of Hieronymus's horsehide story, but it also hits a wall when Morris talked about the makeup of the suit, a zipper-backed one piece that was originally semi-mass-produced as a gorilla costume for a popular magician's trick. So it's basically like a big onesie with a zipper that goes up the back of it, which is not a two-piece costume at all.
So my question is, why did the costume creator, come forward and say that?
So him and Bob both say that they let this go on for years. And even family members of Bob Hieronymus say, yeah, he came out and told us that he did this. And so one theory is that Philip Morris did it so he could get publicity for his costume company, which would make a lot of sense. If that was your costume on film, one of the most controversial pieces of footage ever filmed, that's a big claim to fame. And Bob Hieronymus could have easily have been doing it for the same reason, or just basically, my theory, a hoax on a hoax, or a hoax on a real. So the real hoax is him hoaxing the hoax.
But why would he do that?
Just for either notoriety or just.
If you found Bigfoot, I think that would be more of a notoriety.
Yeah, but Bob Hieronymus wasn't involved in that. He wasn't involved in any of this, according to Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin. So now he knew them, so it's easy to make that connection. And there are a lot of people that didn't really like Roger Patterson. And a big part of that was not being able to pay bills. And a lot of people that were close to him, his brother-in-law, would lend him money, and he almost never paid him back. But when he talked about Roger, he said he was always a straight shooter, and I don't think he ever took money without actually having the intentions of paying him back. But it just worked out that he never did. He kind of always had these big dreams, and he would need money to start these companies and stuff, and then it just would never work out, so he could never pay him back. So that adds a blemish to Roger in a way, but as far as his character goes, he seems like a straight shooter.
Yeah, but he also said that, wasn't he the one that said that, he didn't come forward saying that they saw it? They came forward saying it was a hoax in the first place?
No.
Man, you got me mixed up with 3 different names, man.
I know, I'm throwing a lot of names out. And it makes it confusing because there's 2 Bobs, too. You got Bob Hieronymus and Bob Gimlin. That's why I'm trying to differentiate as much as possible when I'm talking about the 2. And I try not to talk about both of them in the same sentence because that would just really screw you up. But moving on, both of these theories fall short in a big way when it comes to some of the fine detail in the video, which is what appears to be rippling musculature under the skin and fur. You can see what looks like the calf muscle, tendons behind the knee, the triceps in the arms, even the trapezius muscles in the back, and one strange, what looks like an abnormality that Dr. Jeff Meldrum thinks is a herniated muscle in the lateral fascia on the right thigh. And you really see this in a particular frame in the footage that when the right leg is raised, shows a huge bulge as the leg picks up, and then as it extends back out, it goes away, which is exactly what that would look like. Jeff Meldrum is a professor at Idaho State University, and he specializes in foot morphology and bipedalism and upright walking creatures. So like the evolution of the foot, basically. And he also teaches anatomy there. And he said when he was in one of his anatomy labs, he brought this up. He says he always brings this up at least one time a year in his classes and goes over the video. And he was explaining that what looks like that hernia that comes up in that leg. And he had a student in there who said, "Oh, I have one of those." And she said, I think she said she was riding a horse or something and fell off into the brush and kind of got stabbed by a twig or something that was on the ground, and it hadn't healed right. And so she takes off her, her scientist's white gown, and she's wearing shorts underneath. She pulls her leg up and it picks it up like that, extends it out, and you can see it. He said you could see the bulge. He said it was exactly what it looked like on the film. And what Bob Hieronymus claimed is that he forgot his wallet in his pocket when he put the suit on, which when you see it disappear as the leg moves, it looks like something that's musculature underneath. So the bulge in that leg appears to line up with that diagnosis perfectly. Now, another aspect is that the musculature could be pulled off nowadays with foam rubber muscle inserts and four-way stretched fur over top of them, so that when you move, you have nice tight, fabric that looks like, would act like skin, and that foam underneath to replicate the large musculature of that being. But you have to think about the time when the film was shot. Back in 1967, they were only just beginning to experiment with foam rubber material and spandex material that would be needed. The Dynel material that Philip Morris claimed the costume was made out of didn't stretch in any way and wouldn't show muscular definition that we see in the film. It would have to drape over top of somebody if they were going to be able to move in it. If they didn't, if it was nice and skin tight, they wouldn't be able to move, for one thing. And if it was draped the way it would have to be for them to move, you've seen what happens, with any kind of cloth. If you're wearing even your shirt, when you're moving, you have these ripples and folds.
Could that be mistaken for muscle though?
I could see in certain instances, but when you look at this particular footage, it's got to be skin tight material. The way that you can really see musculature defined in the footage. I think it's very clear. And if you want an example of what that, Dynel material would look like if they were going to build it like that, you can look at the original Planet of the Apes movie, which was filmed the same year as the PGF, and the costumes are terrible, and they won an award for special effects that year. So that was state-of-the-art technology, the Planet of the Apes, and it pales in comparison to what the Patterson-Gimlin film shows. So what you have to believe in that case is that either Philip Morris was making costumes that were way better than the ones seen in Hollywood, even though he was really only selling them to, like this particular one that he claims was used in the film was actually a gorilla suit that was used in a magic show that was pretty popular, or a magic trick where they would turn this pretty lady into a gorilla, and it was just a man in this suit, and it just drapes. It's not tight at all. When you see the pictures of that as well, they have those online, it's nothing like it. And you can see the seams in it if they've cut the hair short on it. And this one has way shorter hair than the gorilla costume that he made. And I don't see any seams. So I don't, there's so much more that we can go into.
Oh, I know you can.
But regardless of Bob Hieronymus's incorrect proportions and the discrepancies between his claimed version of the suit against Philip Morris's, I just don't see how the technology at the time would allow for a suit as good as the one seen in the film. And I have to say, personally, I think this is the single most compelling piece of Sasquatch evidence ever captured on camera. Oh, and I never even talked about the fact, everybody talks about, well, it's got breasts, so it's got to be a female. When I was a kid, I always thought I always pictured it as a man. I never even saw the boobs on it.
I didn't either.
I never paid any attention to it. But a lot of people point to that as like, well, who would do that? Why would they put boobs on? And I don't think that's a good way to try to deconstruct the argument, to prove that, well, it can't be a hoax. It's got breasts. That doesn't mean it's not a hoax, just because they put boobs on a monkey costume. But
hey, that's to get rid of some of the drape you were talking about. Okay?
Yeah.
We're gonna get rid of the drape to make it look real.
There's no musculature in the boobs. We don't have to worry about seeing the ripples under that.
You just got to get rid of the drape that you were talking about from the monkey suit.
Yeah. And one thing they actually bring up too, it's really interesting. I should have brought my book in here. When you look at there's one frame. Yeah. Jeff Meldrum, man. Sasquatch. Legends meet science. Buy it. It's amazing. Especially if you want a good breakdown of the Patterson-Gimlin film. It's where I got a lot of this information from, and I've listened to hours of him talking, and I find his interpretation of it to be the most compelling, especially because he knows so much about foot morphology and the way that human anatomy works. But when you look at it's a shot of Patty as she's walking away. She has her back turned and she's got one foot up. And in a lot of the pictures that are out there of the still frame, it looks like the film has been overexposed. And that's what he thinks that Bob Hieronymus looked at the film and then was like, oh, yeah, see, that's a fake foot right there. It's just a slipper on the bottom. And they've made those footprints with different, fake feet. But when you look at the foot, when you blow it up, basically, you can see the individual toes. And the thing is that the bottom of the feet, because they were collecting this shale type sand, it's basically like really fine shale is what that sand is made out of, which reflects sunlight. And so because the camera was a bit overexposed, you see this kind of glow around the foot, and it makes it look like it's just this flat bottom of a slipper until you really zoom in and take a look at it. And they can actually measure the feet and the proportions, because they actually had a man walk in the same place where Patty had walked. That's how they got a better reference for the height and the size of the footprints. Because once you have a general idea of the height of the thing,
you have stride first thing.
Yeah, you can measure the stride, the size of the footprints, and then compare that to a person who's walking right there, which is your control. You know how tall they are. You know what size feet they have, and so. It's just, and the fact, even if they were going to make fake footprints with some kind of stamp, you'd have to apply 500 pounds of pressure. They even said while they were there that the horses walking near it pushed down, and that was closer to the weight of, or it was closer to the depth of those footprints, but not quite. And it makes sense because a horse is on 4 hooves. So that weight is distributed.
And they weigh a lot more than 500 pounds.
Right. And I think that's also part of how they got to that figure of 500 pounds.
Also, the shape of the foot has a big thing to do with a hoof, too. It makes different imprint altogether.
Well, and the shape of the hoof, you would think, because that's a smaller surface area, should push down further than a big, flat surface that's, I think,
depends on the material, too.
Long. Yeah, the material, but
it was the shape of the foot.
But the material was right next. They were doing it in the same material.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
All I'm saying is, some material might act like, if it walked in sand, it might pick up differently than a horse's hoof would.
Right.
So, like the horse's hoof might go down further in different types of material.
Maybe. I mean,
was the material fine enough to pick up dermal ridges at all?
No, I don't think so. At that, I have to double check that. I don't think in that set of casts they did.
That would be a big thing if they can replicate. If they have dermal ridges, that is hard to replicate. Well, I guess it's not hard to replicate, but because you can't reference it to anything, really.
Well, I mean, it wouldn't be super hard, I guess, if you made a stamp. If you just took like a really good high def version of a footprint that you made a cast of a human footprint and blow it up. But the only thing then is that the space between the dermal ridges expands as you pull that foot up. You'd either need a really good person in there with some fine sculpting skills, but then you still have to figure out how to...
Costume maker.
Yeah, but no, the costume that he said that the feet were different. They didn't have a bottom to the costume. So it was just like a shell that you put over top of your shoes. But another thing that's really interesting about that mid-tarsal break we mentioned, so that was found there, and a lot of people didn't even pay attention to it back then. I don't know if Jeff Meldrum was the first person to realize that was there, and it's actually something that we've found in what he calls relict hominids, other, I think not Australopithecines, but another ancient ancestor of human that has that mid-tarsal break in roughly the same proportional area of the footprint. And then years later, they'd gone to, before he had even really gone that public about the mid-tarsal break, he was going to check out another sighting in China of the Yeren, their version of Bigfoot. And there was a man there who claimed that he saw one, they both locked eyes and he jumped behind a rock and all this stuff and landed in the sand. And he went up and took casts. and they have that same mid-tarsal break. And this is found in multiple, across many different versions of, or many different examples of alleged Bigfoot tracks. You find that mid-tarsal break. And it's interesting because what it translates to in a footprint is you have a heel that strikes down real deep, and then the front of the foot is real deep, and in the middle there's this real distinct, almost like hard line like that, where if you put your hand on a table.
Kind of like look at a chimp's foot and how they kind of curl over in a way.
Exactly. It's kind of like that. And it's what a lot of people say that they thought that was from was that Patty must have stepped on a branch that was green, so it came down and her foot rocked over top of it, and then it popped back up. But it doesn't line up. You find multiple tracks in there with that alleged mid-tarsal break. And another, just aside for, general Bigfoot footprints found, when you look at the sample size of footprints that were found, so the total number of casts that we have that we think are legitimate, or could be, and then you take the range and sizes of those footprints between them all, so you have like your really big ones, your smaller ones, your in-betweens, it's the same exact proportion of distribution as human foot size. So the size between adult humans, between the smaller all the way up to the larger, and if you were to put that on a graph, the Bigfoot tracks match that almost perfectly, which is indicative of a living species, or a lot of people having a bunch of different size footprints in just the right proportions to match or come close to human distribution. It's really interesting when you get digging deep into it. And I could go on and on and on forever. This is I've been waiting to get into this for a while.
And I'm finally glad someone else can sit here and listen to what he rants on to me beyond this podcast. For a couple of years now, he's gone off the rails about Bigfoot, and now someone else can finally sit here and just listen like I have been.
Well, I'm sorry to torture you, but
there's other cryptids we could talk about, Dan, other than just Bigfoot.
I know, but it's just my favorite. I think out of most of the cryptids out there, this one seems the most legit to me, based on, a lot of people say there's not enough evidence, and there still might not be. I'm waiting for the day that we finally capture more compelling footage. I think this is really compelling. But I also thought about this. What if we have some kind of paradox going where you ask somebody like, all right, for a piece of footage, like a lot of people say that this is too grainy and that the Patterson-Gimlin film doesn't pass muster just because it's not clear enough. And then, so what if we get one? I feel like if we had one that was super clear, people would think it would look too real and they still wouldn't think it was. You know what I mean? It'd be like, well, that can't be real because we have perfect footage of it,
I don't know.
That's clearly fake, like, because there's way more hoaxed or misidentification out there. There's way more hoaxes and just people seeing bears and even screwing up bear footprints, because when they double step, it's very convincing. It looks a lot like on first glance, like, holy shit, that's a Bigfoot
footprint.
Yeah, it looks like a huge man's footprint, but and I acknowledge there's a lot more of that out there than there is legitimate evidence, or what seems to be legitimate. But you can't just throw that away because we have other hoaxes and other misinterpreted evidence. If you have something that is compelling enough, I think it's worth hanging on to. And I think the PGF is one of those pieces, because nobody has been able to totally claim that it's not real. And of all the hoaxes out there, or all the hoax theories for the Patterson-Gimlin film, I just don't think that there's too many inconsistencies within the hoaxes to have that be the answer for what it is. I think it's a very good chance that that is the single best footage of a cryptid that anyone has ever caught. Stick around for the Beast of Barmston Drain.
This story takes place in Yorkshire, England, during the 18th century, along the banks of a 23-mile waterway known as the Barmston Drain. Built in 1798, the drain was meant to drain the surrounding marshes in the area. At this point, the local wolf populations have been eradicated. Actually, there haven't been wolves in England since 200 years prior, but all of a sudden rumors and sightings start floating in about a half-wolf, half-man type creature terrorizing the village of Hull, a small village in England. Historical accounts tell of wolves being hunted in England as far back as 1,000 years ago. Wolf hunting was a way to pay tribute to kings and nobles. In return, the hunters and servants to the kings would be granted land if they got rid of wolves in the area. During the year 1281, Edward I made an order to exterminate all the wolves in England. Though he made the order, there were still small numbers of wolves all the way into the 17th century. But werewolves were a part of English folklore, but they weren't a huge part of it. There were small stories about werewolves, but it wasn't anything outrageous, which makes the story interesting when sightings of a half-man, half-wolf creature start popping up again. There have been accounts of the native wolves being seen digging corpses up in graveyards and eating the corpses. Some believe that this is where the werewolf came to be, but others don't have any idea where it came from. But one thing is for sure, the people of Yorkshire are scared of this creature. The first accounts of this date back to the 1100s. People would describe a wolfman creature. They call it the stinker, which walks like a man and has red eyes. A strong tail that can knock you off your feet, and the most distinct feature is its terrible breath, hence the name the stinker. These reports began to die down by the 18th century with the wolf population, but new and more recent sightings have been occurring. In 1960, a man was driving a truck, claims that his truck was attacked by an 8-foot-tall bipedal wolf with red eyes. He was driving from Kingston to Hull when the creature apparently smashed his windshield, and then it ran off. Ever since then, pretty much dead silence. Not many reports. Till 2015.
Really?
Yep. In December 2015, another sighting had come in from a woman who claimed she watched the creature turning from a human into a werewolf. She had come across a huge wolf-like creature near the drain. She watched it go from standing upright on all and then turn and running on all fours like a dog. The woman reported it as being an estimated 8 feet tall. She said it was massive and muscular. It ran on all fours for a distance, then got on 2 legs and jumped 30 feet across the Barmston Drain. Her report made the local newspaper, the Daily Express. In another account, a couple was walking through a wooded area near the Barmston Drain when they saw a tall, hairy humanoid beast with a snout, face, and powerful tail. It was crouched over what they said was a German shepherd, which it was eating. They said that the creature noticed them, it picked up the carcass in its jaws, and ran off, jumping over an 8-foot fence in the process.
Holy crap.
So not only is it...
It's a cannibal.
Yeah. But I mean, not only are people seeing it, but they're seeing it eating a dog. Right. And not only eating it, but picking up in their jaws and jumping over an 8-foot fence in the process. And a German shepherd at that.
Yeah, it's a big dog.
So it's not a small dog.
Probably.
Yeah. So it's not a small dog. That's my favorite report.
That's pretty crazy, if that's true.
And another report comes in from a woman who is delivering pizzas when she noticed a huge, muscular, dog-like creature with cream and gray-colored fur with an almost human-like face following her car, walking on 2 legs.
That's a disturbing thought.
Want some pizza?
Yeah.
Another report comes in when a woman was walking her dog alongside the drain when she saw something that she quoted, "half man, half dog," in the distance. The woman was terrified and her dog began to shake. It would not go any further. And another report came in when a group of people were driving alongside an area with a lot of open fields when they spotted something on the road ahead. They had heard rumors of a panther that had escaped, but they said that this was too big to be a panther and far too big to be a dog. They stated that it looked like it was on steroids. It was petrifying, they said. It walked up to the car and then lowered down like it was going to jump on the car. Then they went on to state, "We don't know what we saw." That was a group of, I believe they're college kids, and some of their friends didn't believe them, but from their recounts, they don't care if they didn't believe them or not.
Right.
They were terrified of what they saw, and they didn't care who believed them and who didn't. And then Charles Christian, who is an author of A Travel Guide to Yorkshire's Weird Wolds. And a wold is open fields, open land in England.
Huh.
So
Never heard that term before.
Yeah. So Charles Christian, who is an author of A Travel Guide to Yorkshire's Weird Wolds, stated that multiple sightings come in, combined with stories dating back centuries. It's hard to ignore the possibilities that something might be there. He also states that he was skeptical at first, but more and more people contacted him, all saying they had seen the same thing. Some locals actually got together for a werewolf hunt and searched it alongside the drain, but they were only armed with cameras and recording equipment. The hunt went on and ended up unsuccessful in finding the creature. So, it's really got people scared.
Yeah,
really got people scared. It's got the townspeople going out for a werewolf hunt.
That's like this is all to me. All I can picture in my head is an American Werewolf in London. Oh my god!
I know.
That's awesome.
That's my favorite movie.
Real life
American
Werewolf in London. That's so cool.
Yeah, it is. And the craziest, like I say, the craziest thing about this is people are. This is 2015, 2016.
Right. That's
these reports
really recent.
Out. Yeah, and people are scared. They are scared.
That's wild.
Like, it's not just something they see it. They're scared of it.
I don't
get. And they all report somewhat the same thing. Like I was going back in those reports. Everyone says they see a big wolf-type dog thing walking on two legs with red eyes and a big tail.
Have you heard of the Beast of Bray Road?
No.
So that's in America. I'm blanking on the state that it's in. It's a Midwestern state, I think, Iowa maybe. I might be wrong there though. But it's almost an exact description of that too, like dog man, werewolf type character. So it's kind of weird that, when you think of werewolves, for one thing, you think of like medieval times. And
I know.
People,
yeah,
just like lore, legends.
Yeah,
of back in the day when they were still talking about dragons and stuff like that too.
And like I say, that those stories date back to the 1100s, so they date back to then. But then stories start dying down as the wolf population died down in the 1800s, stuff like that. But all of a sudden, back in the 60s, they had that one report of getting a windshield smashed,
right,
and then running off into the woods. And then ever since then, 2015, 2016, reports started coming in.
That is so wild.
Yeah.
I feel like that should be, I don't know how I haven't heard of this.
I don't know how I didn't either.
I've never heard of this at all.
No, I haven't either. I have no clue. Well, we're not in England. I guess that's why.
I guess, but, I'm pretty in tune with the whole cryptid scene, and I've never heard of that.
Me neither. And the weirdest thing that like the author of A Travel Guide to Yorkshire's Weird Wolds, Charles Christian, he states the same thing, that, first he was a skeptic. And this is a guy that writes about weird stuff. He was a skeptic about it. But more and more people contacted him saying they had seen the same thing. They had seen the same creature. And he, like I said earlier, he says, when multiple sightings come in combined with stories dating back centuries, it's hard to ignore the possibility something might be there.
You see, this is what's interesting with this kind of story, especially when you look at the location. It's in England. And I don't know if they obviously have dealt with wolf populations in the past.
Yeah.
But it's very clear, like it's easy. I can see how someone, going back to Bigfoot, how someone could mistake a bear standing up on its hind legs in the woods for Bigfoot.
But
if you're just catching a glance. Yeah, a wolf doesn't get on two hind legs and walk around and run. Yeah, something that big.
Everyone says 8 feet tall seems to be the range. Most of the time I read here it's 8 feet tall. Everyone has that same number, 8 feet, 8 feet.
What about, is there any variation in coloration of the fur at all?
I've only seen one, other than the one report I have.
You said it was cream colored?
The gray and cream color. I read one report and it was like a grayish color, but they weren't.
Pretty similar.
Yeah. Now, England and Ireland both had dire wolves. If you don't know what a dire wolf is, they're Arctic wolves, which are
big wolves.
which grow to be 240, 250 pound wolves. So they're like a gray wolf doubled. They're giant wolves, but they're eradicated from England.
And I mean, even then, a dire wolf doesn't get up on its hind legs.
And they're not 8 feet tall, and they can't jump over an 8-foot fence with a German Shepherd in his mouth.
Right. That would be, for one thing, the size of the German Shepherd, which they tend to be bigger dogs.
Yeah.
But
even if it's a puppy,
yeah,
a dire wolf isn't going to jump over an 8-foot fence.
Right. I mean, a deer would probably have trouble with that.
8-foot fence is tall, and they don't even have any deer that I know of that are native to England right in Yorkshire.
Even if they do, it's very clear the difference between a
deer and a
deer
wolf.
and a wolf, and then
and
a deer
werewolf.
and a exactly.
Yeah. But that's the crazy thing of how this case really struck me because of how scared people were. People said they were terrified, and they got together and had a werewolf hunt.
Yeah.
In 2016, they had a werewolf hunt.
That's so crazy.
So people were that scared. And it was someone high up in the council of the town of Hull said that he would join the werewolf search party and that he would write down any sightings that they saw. So not only is it just the townspeople, but it's someone from the council of the town.
Yeah, they're really, the higher-ups are taking it seriously.
Yeah, because it's terrifying people, apparently.
That's so wild.
And I can't find any recent reports of it. The only ones I could find were 2015, 2016 at the latest.
That's more recent than I would have thought.
Yeah.
Are there any accounts that you found of it attacking somebody, aside from smashing a windshield, which is no doubt violent, but not attacking a human, you know?
There were none that I could find attacking a human other than the dog, and I think that's it. Because when I was reading, I think in total it was like 10 accounts or something came out. In total, 8 or 10 accounts.
In 2016. Okay.
Yeah. No one got hurt. Obviously, a dog did, I assume. It's crazy, though, that recent of times, people are scared of a werewolf.
Yeah.
Like, I can't imagine being in the town of Hull, just living there, waking up, and being scared to go outside because there might be a werewolf.
Right.
I've never, ever had that fear in my life.
No. Not as an adult, anyway.
I can't, well, yeah. And I can't imagine what that might be. Because it's legit. People were legit scared. They're terrified.
Right. Well, and you said something, too, about it. Someone saying it could be a panther.
Yeah. So there's another story. The beast of, I can't name it off the top of my head. Starts with a B. Another place in England. But it's a black panther supposedly running around in England.
I've heard of that. And
yeah.
People claim to have pictures of them. Like, they think they're legit.
Yeah. I've seen pictures of them, too. And I don't know how legit the pictures are. I didn't look that far into it. But that's totally different from a werewolf.
Oh, yeah. No.
8 foot tall, stands on 2 legs, jumping across a 30-foot bank.
That's another level than an alien big cat.
Yeah.
I just can't get over that's how recent that is.
I know. It blew me away when I found this. It blew me away.
God, that's wild. Makes me want to watch American Werewolf in London.
I know. I do too. And the craziest thing is the accounts are the same as they were back in the 1100s. Like I say, in the 1100s, people would describe a wolf-man-like creature that they called the stinker, which walks like a man, has red eyes, a strong tail, and, of course, the most distinct feature is its breath. But the description is still the same.
Right.
In 2016, as it was back in the 1100s. A wolf man with red eyes.
I love that name.
They're still...
the stinker.
The stinker.
It sounds like, like when a parent playing with a kid, oh, you stinker.
That's the first thing I thought of.
When you, just picture that dog getting, killed and taken over a fence, and that person just stand, oh, you stinker, got my dog.
Don't think that's how it turned out.
No, but that's just such a, and I guess back in the day that probably instilled fear in people, but I think
back in the 1100s, yeah.
I like the new name better myself.
But it's still that the fact that the reports are the same is kind of weird.
It's intriguing at the least. I mean, and for it to be in the same area. And
roughly, yeah.
So it's mainly seen around that drain.
Yeah.
That's why it's...
But it's a 23-mile-long drain.
So it's a pretty good swath of area. So it's
but
kind of like
mainly around the town of Hull for some apparent reason.
So the drain's like a waterway.
Yeah,
I assume.
it was made to, like I say, it was made back in 1789, 1798 to drain local marshes and stuff like that.
Right.
And there are a lot of stories behind that too. Supposedly haunted children with the drain.
Ooh.
Yeah, I'm going to dive into that one.
Possible future episode there.
I'm going to do it. So there's a lot of creepy stuff surrounding the drain, but it kind of floored me when I read this reports and everything, just that recent of a werewolf.
And the consistency with the
reports. Yeah.
That's wild.
Yeah, it is. It's wild, and it's, I don't know, it's almost romantic in a way.
Yeah.
The thought that the mind can run wild like that and think of something as crazy as a werewolf is out there.
I think that's what's so attractive to, at least to me, about the idea of all these things being real, is that
it is for me too.
Even though it's something that it's like, if it comes across you, might kill you.
Yeah.
Just the fact that something that odd could actually be out there in the first place.
Yeah.
And be, just
strike
lurking.
Fear in people.
Yeah.
A fear that they're going to die, you know?
It's a lot like that idea, because like going back to the alien big cat with the Black Panther sightings in England, because those are we have those in America, even all the way up in Ohio, people see or claim to see big black panthers from the looks of it.
Yeah.
And that is intriguing, but we already know that we have panthers, so it's not out of the realm of possibility. Yeah, it's not out of the realm of possibility,
right,
to see one of those in a place where they're not supposed to be. But when you have something as crazy as a werewolf being reported,
yeah,
that's creepy.
Isn't that weird?
I don't know. I love it. I didn't know what to expect coming into it, because I'd never really heard of it. We had talked before, and I kind of thought it was some kind of Wolfman thing, but
man, I told you before we did the podcast, I was typing it up last night, and I was getting excited, man. I was like, this is awesome, dude. This is awesome. I can't get, like the woman who said that she saw the werewolf turn into a werewolf from a human. She said it was standing on two legs, then it got down on all fours and started running on all fours. A person can't, if you see a person running on all fours, it's a person, because we're not built for that. So to go that fluidly and then to jump across a 30-foot bank, that's just out of the realm of human possibility. I don't know what else it could be, because the only other animals, like I say, that could resemble it are wolves, but they were eradicated from England.
Yeah,
And when you see wolves, most of the time it's a pack of wolves. You rarely ever see a lone wolf.
Yeah, and that's where it's either. I don't see how misidentification is possible in this case.
I don't either. That's the other thing that got me.
So if it's not misidentification, then it's either flat out people are
making up crazy stories,
making up stuff, or they are, hallucinating. But for so many people to come forward, I feel like it's either got to be a hoax or it's got to be real.
Yeah, that's my thought too.
And I'd rather entertain the idea that it's real, honestly, that story too of that, running and turning into a wolf like that is similar to a lot of skinwalker stories as well.
Yeah,
people that claim to see people turning into skinwalkers.
But they supposedly the skinwalkers look like a real wolf.
Right.
They don't look like a half man, half like an 8-foot tall half man, half wolf.
There's one story I heard, and I think it happened near Skinwalker Ranch, where someone was driving their car and a wolf was running next to them, and all of a sudden it got up on two legs and was like looking at them running next to the car, getting it. So and I could be relaying that wrong, but I'm pretty sure that's right, which is similar, and it makes you wonder: is that some kind of connection in some way? Are skinwalkers just the interpretation of this phenomena in Native American culture?
It could be,
if there's any truth behind the
right, and that's the interesting thing. Werewolves, I could go on for days about different werewolves and different accounts of werewolves, because they're all different. The ones from Ireland started different, and they didn't, They didn't last up until past, I believe it was like 12th century or something. It didn't go past that very far.
That's where I thought most of them stopped anyway. I've heard of the Beast of Bray Road, which kind of smacks of werewolf, but I don't think anybody's ever claimed that they've seen a man turn into a werewolf. It's usually just like a dog man. I think it's the description that people use more often.
Yeah. And a couple accounts that I read, one, of course, said almost human-like face. And I read one other account that said an almost human-like face. And that's kind of strange. But then there's another one with a snouted face,
Right.
Another account said that they had a snouted face and a powerful tail. Now, the tail is something that people tend to go back to, too. Which, it's weird, man, to have, takes Bigfoot out of the equation. Because it's got a tail.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't think Bigfoot's going jumping over 8-foot fences.
No.
Not in a, I don't know how they said it jumped. All they said was jump. But still.
Bizarre.
Yeah.
That's a really fun one.
Yeah.
I like that a lot.
Blast looking this up, man. So, some say the werewolf sightings, of course, are nonsense. But others believe that something mysterious is still lurking the hills of Yorkshire, England. What do you believe? This is the Beast of Barmston Green.
This concludes tonight's episode of the Black Flame Podcast. Be sure to check us out on Instagram at the Black Flame Podcast.
Stay tuned for more episodes and stay spooky.